So welcome to this latest video on 162 Maths. In this video we'll be going over the AQA Level 2 Certificate of Further Maths June 2022 Paper 2, which is a calculator paper. Now before we get started, just a reminder that if I have made any mistakes in this video, please do check out the description. I'll make a comment in there if I have, and I'll also include a question breakdown so you can see which question refers to which topic. So if there was a question you find particularly tricky or got wrong, you can see what topic it is and then maybe go back and revise and review that particular topic. And I'll also include a link to the 162 Maths contents page, which gives you easy access to not only further maths walkthroughs but also all the GCSE lessons and Key Stage 3 lessons, so it goes through all the topics in detail as well as other resources. So let's get started on question 1. So question 1 says factorise fully 12w plus 18w squared. So for this, what we need to do is look at the numbers, and we can see that there is a common multiple, or common factor I should say, of 12 and 18, which in this case is going to be 6. And then looking at the letters, both terms have got a w, so we take out the lowest power of w, which is w, and then all I need to do is just then see to myself, what do I multiply 6w to get 12w? That's going to be 2. And what do I need to multiply 6w to get 18w squared? Well, that's going to be 3w. And there is our fully factorised expression. Then moving on to question 2, it says M is the midpoint of PQ, work out the value of A. Now for this, because M is the midpoint, we know what the midpoint is. What we need to do is see the relationship between M and Q. So if I draw a triangle, then if I then compare the two x ordinates, so I've got 8 and 6, that means that this base of that triangle is going to be 6 from 8 take away 2. Then to work out the height of that triangle, that's going to be the difference in the y ordinate. So the difference between 6 and -1 is 7. Now, if M is the midpoint, then that triangle is going to be the same as the triangle drawn from P to M. So that's also going to have a height of 7 and a base of 6. So then to find A, which is the y ordinate, I've got to do -1 minus 7, which gives me an answer of -8. So the y ordinate for P is going to be -8. Then moving on to question 3, it says, for 3a rather, it says work out 3 lots of 4, 2, 1, 0 and the matrix 2, 0, -1, 5. Now for this, the first thing I would do is multiply the 3 by the first matrix. So here what I've got is 3 times 4, which is 12, 3 times 2, which is 6, 3 times 1, which is 3, and 3 times 0, which is 0. Then what I've got is I've got a 2 by 2 matrix for both of those two. Now for this, what we need to do is do some matrix multiplication. Now if you have got a calculator that handles matrices, for example, one of the common ones is the Casio FX991EX calculator. You can simply type this into your calculator as long as you know how to use it, and then you could just simply plug it into your calculator, job done. Now if you have done that, I would, for 3 marks, I would multiply that first matrix by 3 and then input it in, and then you would get your correct answer. And if you did get your correct answer, you'll end up with the answer I'm going to get. Now if you haven't got one of those calculators, then you would need to multiply this out. Now if I just do a little brief lesson on how to multiply a 2 by 2 matrix by another 2 by 2 matrix, well, if I've got A, B, C, D in my first matrix, and I've got E, F, G, H in my second matrix, then the multiplication of those two matrices is going to be AE plus, and it's going to be BG, and this one here is going to be CE plus, and that's going to be DG, and then for the top right hand corner it's going to be AF plus BH, and it's going to be CF plus DH. And all I then need to do is just substitute those numbers in. So what I end up with, if I plug that into this, I'm going to end up with 12 lots of 2. I'm going to end up plus 6 lots of -1. I'm going to end up here with 3 lots of 2 plus 0 lots of -1. And then for this number here, I'm going to have 12 lots of 0 plus 6 lots of 5. And the last number, I'm going to have 3 lots of 0 plus 0 lots of 5. Now if I then work all of those out, 12 times 2 is 24. 24 minus 6 is going to give me an answer of 18. Then I've got 12 times 0 plus, so that's 0, plus 30. That's going to give me 30. 3 times 2 is 6, plus 0 times minus 1 is 0, so that's going to be 6. And 3 times 0, which is 0, plus 0 times 5, which is 0, giving me a final matrix of 18, 30, 6, 0. Moving on to question 3, we're going to do a 2 by 2 matrix multiplied by a 2 by 1, and that equals 48 over 12. Now for this, if I just use algebra to explain how we do this, so I've got AB and CD multiplied by EF. Now if I want to multiply this out, all I need to do is do A times E plus BF, and it's going to be CE plus DF. So if I substitute those numbers in, what do I get? Well, I get A times E, which is 7 times 2, plus B times F, so that's A squared times A, and that equals 78. And I've got, what's that going to be? 2 times B minus 5A equals 12. Now what I need to do is just simply solve these for their respective letters. Now for this one, what we've got is we've got 14 plus A cubed equals 78. So A cubed equals 64. So therefore A equals 4. So that's my first value. Then using A equals 4 here, I get 2B minus 5 times 4 equals 12. And that's going to give me 2B minus 20 equals 12. So 2B equals 32. So B equals 16, and there are my two values. Now moving on to question 4, it says line A has the equation of y plus 4x equals 6, and line B is parallel to line A and passes through the point 2, 1. The point D to 2D lies on the line B. Work out the value of D. Well, looking at this, the first thing we want to do is we want to work out the equation of line B. Now how we do that? Well, we know that the line B is parallel to line A, and so if we work out the gradient, so if I just write this in the form of y equals mx plus c, we get minus 4x plus 6. So that means that line M, if it's parallel, is going to have a gradient value of minus 4. Let's put a little bubble around that. So then to find the equation of line A, I use the equation of y minus y1 equals mx minus x1, and substituting the values in, so this value here is my x1, this value here is my y1, I get y minus 1 equals minus 4, x minus 2. Substituting it all in, we get y minus 1 equals minus 4x plus 8. So we get y equals minus 4x, and we add 1 plus 9. And that there is my equation of B. Now the question's then asking me that I've got a point on B. So if I now substitute this coordinate here, so here I've got a x value of D and a y value of 2D, and I substitute that into this, then what I end up with is 2D equals minus 4 lots of D plus 9. And if I simplify all of that, I end up with 2D equals minus 4D plus 9. Take this over to the other side, end up with 6D equals 9. So D equals 9 over 6, which equals 3 over 2. So my D value equals 3 over 2, or I could write it as a decimal as 1.5, whichever floats your boat. Then moving on to question 5, it says work out all the negative integer values of x for which 3x squared is less than 48. Well, if I have 3x is less than 48, then I take the 3 over by dividing by 3, and that leaves me with x squared is less than 48 divided by 3, which is 16. Got ahead of myself on there. And then expanding this, if you know your inequalities with quadratics, square root both sides, we end up with minus 4x and 4. And the question's asking to write down all the negative integer values. Well, x is between minus 4 and 4, exclusive of those two numbers. So the answer is going to be minus 3, minus 2, and minus 1. Moving on to question 6, it says prove algebraically that when n is an integer, 2n plus 1 all squared minus 2n minus 1 all squared, all divided by 4 is even. So let's have a look at this. So first thing we want to do is expand that part there. Now if I just label this in, let's use a bit of colour coordination. So let's do this in green, that bit there. So if I do it over, let's do it here. So I've got 2n plus 1, 2n plus 1. And if I expand that out correctly, I should end up with 4n squared plus 4n plus 1. Then if I expand 2n minus 1 squared, so 2n minus 1, 2n minus 1, and that's going to leave me with 4n squared minus 4n plus 1. And if I join those two things together, being careful with the negatives, so with the green I get 4n squared plus 4n plus 1. I'm just going to put that in brackets, and then that is minus, let's use this one, minus 4n squared minus 4n plus 1, and that is all divided by 2. So now if I look at this numerator here, I end up with 4n squared plus 4n plus 1. Now you've got to be careful with the minus, so that becomes minus 4n squared plus 4n minus 1, and that's all divided by 4. I don't know why I wrote 2 there, so let me just quickly correct that. There we go. And then now what I've got to do is just cancel things down. So this cancels with this, and what I'm left with, and that cancels with that, and all I'm left with is 4n plus 4n, which is 8n, divided by 4, which leaves me with 2n, and this here is any multiple of 2 will be always even. So something along those lines. That written statement needs to be said, but you could write it in a different way, but basically saying as you're multiplying n by 2, the answer will always be even. Moving on to question 7, it says how many integers between 200,000 and 400,000 can be formed using only the following digits with no repetition of any digits. So for this, what we need to do is use the product rule for counting, in which that in order for it to be a number between 200,000 and 400,000, that this number must start with either a 2 or a 3. Now for that, if we have, so for in order for it to start with 2 and 3, if we ignore those numbers, then for the 5th digit, what we'd end up with is 5 options. With the 3rd digit, so if I just go for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So this number needs to be a 2 or a 3. Then out of the numbers left, I've got 5 options. For the next digit, I'm going to end up with 4 options because that one's already been used for the previous one. This one, there are 3 options. This one, there's 2 options, and then I'll always end up with 1. So it's going to be 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1. And because there are 2 possible numbers to start with, I multiply that by 2. And if I type that all into my calculator, I get an answer of 240. Moving on to question 8, it says that a curve has the equation of y equals x cubed minus 5x squared. At 2 points on the curve, the rate of change of y with respect to x is 4. Work out the equation in terms of x to represent this information. Give your answer in the form of ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0, where a, b and c are integers. So for this, because we're talking about the rate of change, whenever you see that word rate of change, you always want to think differentiation. And so what we need to do is we need to differentiate this equation here. So if y equals x cubed minus 5x squared, then what we then need to do is work out the dy over dx. Now remember, when you're differentiating, you move the power to the front and lower the power by 1. So what we end up with is 3x squared minus 10x. Then from this, we know that that is equal to 4. So then what I've got is 3x squared minus 10x minus 4 equals 4. And then I just take the 4 over to the other side, leaving me with the answer of 3x squared minus 10x minus 4 equals 0, which is exactly the form that they wanted me to find. It then says, hence work out the two possible values of x. Well, for this, all I need to do is, because it says 3 significant figures, what I want to do is solve 3x squared minus 10x minus 4 equals 0. Now, because it mentions anything to do with rounding, solving that quadratic, I'm going to go straight into using the formula. So I'm using the quadratic formula, and again, you can, if you've got one of the A-level calculators, it will do it for you. But basically, you have an A value of 3, a B value of minus 10, and a C value of minus 4. Remember, the quadratic formula looks something like this. And we substitute those values into the formula. If you do that correctly to 3 significant figures, you should end up with an answer of 3.69 or minus 0.361. And there we go. Remember, with significant figures, you don't include any zeros at the front, so that's why that one's written to 3 decimal places. But remember, it is mentioned to 3 sig fig. Moving on to question 9, it says the first 3 terms of a linear sequence are 30, 30 plus 4x, and 30 plus 8x, where k is a constant. For 9a, it says work out an expression in terms of k for the 4th term. Give your answer to it in its simplest form. So for this, because it is a linear sequence, we just need to see what's being added or subtracted. Now from here, we can see the difference between the second term and the first term is plus 4k. So all you're doing to get from one term to the next is adding 4k. So all I need to do is just do 30 plus 8k plus 4k, which gives me the answer of 30 plus 12k. Then moving on to question 9b, it says the 100th term of the sequence is 525. Work out the value of k. Well, for this, what we need to do is actually look at the sequence. So if I just write down what that sequence is, so I've got 30, 30 plus 4k, 30 plus 8k, and 30 plus 12k. Just a little reminder. So what I need to do is find the nth term of this particular sequence. Now for this, what I need to do is find a connection. Now this is when n equals 1, that's when n equals 2, that's when n equals 3, and this is when n equals 4. Now in terms of the sequences, what we know is, so if I just write nth term here, we know that in the nth term we've always got that 30, so I can write 30. So all I need to do is to connect the n values, which I'm hoping is on your screen. Yes, it is. And what I want to do is connect that with this 4k, which that is a really poor colour choice. So let me just undo that. And what I want to do is I want to compare it to get from the n value, so this is 0k, this to that. So I want to connect 3 with 4, 8k and 4 to 12k. So if I look at the k part, when n is 1, 2, 3, 4, the k part is 0, 4, 8, and 12. Now if I find an nth term for this, this is obviously the difference is going up by 4, so 4n is going to be in there. And what do I have to do to get from 4 to 0? Take away 4. So the k part is going to be 4n minus 4k. Now I've got my nth term. I can now make this look at the information that's given to me in the question. It says the 100th term, so when n equals 100, this is going to equal 525. So what I've then got is I've got 30 plus 4 lots of 100 minus 4k equals 525. And what I want to do is I want to solve this for k. So what I've got is I've got 30 plus 400 take away 4 is 396, k equals 525. Take the 30 over to the other side, in which I'm going to end up with 396k equals 495. And then if I take the 396 over to the other side by dividing, I get a k value of 1.25. And remember, k is a constant, it's not a n, so it doesn't need to be a whole number, it doesn't need to be positive, but it's just the value of k. So my k value is 1.25. Moving on to question 10, it says, here are 4 sketch graphs. Circle the letter of the sketch graph that represents y equals 3, 2 to the power of x. So what we're looking for is an exponential graph, and we're looking for the value of y and on all the graphs we've got the y-intercept. So to find the y-intercept, all we need to do is just sub x equals 0. And if I do that, I get y equals 3 times 2 to the power of 0, which is 3 times 1, because anything to the power of 0 is 1. So I'm looking for a y ordinate of 3 and an x ordinate of 0, in which then what I've got now, I'm also looking for a graph. So it's either going to be B or D. And with this, we're looking for a graph that goes in this shape. So the answer I want to circle is going to be D. So moving on to question 11, it says, here is a right angle triangle. You are given that A is greater than 5. Use trigonometry to work out the range of values of x. Now for 2 marks, this one's quite stringy. So I would probably say that some of you may get this straight away, in which the 2 marks will be relatively quite easy. But I'm going to go explain it in a way that kind of makes a bit more sense. So as it says use trigonometry, we've got a right angle triangle. The first thing I need to do is select which trig ratio am I going to use. So here we've got h and we've got a. So that means I'm going to be using cos x, which is a over h. Now if I substitute those numbers in, I get cos x equals a minus 3 divided by 4. Now the fact that it tells me a is greater than 5, and this fraction here has to be a maximum of 1. So this as a maximum of 1 as a fraction, not just the numerator. Then the possible values of a can be is going to be between 5 and 7, because when a is 5, we're going to have 5 minus 3, and which is a half, and then we've got when a is 7, we'll have 7 minus 3, which is 4, divided by 4 gives me 1. So that means that the largest value of cos x is going to be when x is going to be 5, and the smallest value of cos x is going to be when x, or a I should say, not x, it's going to get too confusing. Where's that pen gone? When a equals 5, and that is when a equals 7. So from this, what we've then got is the smallest cos x is going to be 5. Well, the smallest is when x equals 7, so that's 7 take away 3, so that's when it's 1. And the largest is when cos x equals 0.5. Now, the reason I've done it that way is because when we look at the cos graph, it looks like this. Now, when cos is between 0.5, which is here, this is when cos is 1 and 0.5 is there. Now, when cos is 0, actually, let me just make that perfectly a little bit clearer. It's obviously clearly decided to delete. So let's just draw that here. And this is when 1 and 0.5 is there. So what I'm looking for is this value here. Remember, this is my x value. And this value here. So I'm looking for those two numbers there. So now if I then do inverse cos of 0.5 and the inverse cos of 1, this is going to give me a value of 0, and this is going to give me a value of 60. So that means that the range of x is going to be between 0 and 60 degrees. Now again, for 2 marks, that's a lot of work, and I'm hoping that my method may make a bit of sense, but it's just recognizing that that fraction can only be somewhere between a half and 1. And then using the graph, you can then work out which two values you need, and you only really need to work out this value here, which is 60, and that's 0, and then you can work out the answer to this particular question. Moving on to question 12, let's just zoom in so we can see it a little bit clearer on the screen. It says that work out the gradient of the curve y equals 12x cubed minus 8x plus 3 all over 4x squared at the point x equals minus 1. And it's asking us to must show our working out. So for this, as we've got 3 terms in the numerator, I personally would split this up into 3 fractions. So I've got 12x cubed over 4x squared minus 8x over 4x squared minus or plus 3 over 4x squared. Now by splitting this up, what I can do is individually look at simplifying each of those bits there. So I can define all 3 aspects, all 3 terms on the numerator by 4x squared. And what you notice is that things do simplify. So here 12 over 4, well that 4 cancels with that and I'm left with 3. And then x squared divided by x cubed is just going to leave me with an x. Then 8 divided by 4 is 2, so that becomes a 2. And x divided by x squared is just x at the bottom. And then I can't simplify the last term, so I'm going to leave that as it is. Now from this, I can then write this, what's left. So I've got 3x minus 2 over x plus 3 over 4x squared. Now from this, what I can then do is I can write this using indices. So what I've got is I've got y equals 3x. I can rewrite 2 over x as 2 lots of x minus 1. And I can add that to 3/4, and I've got x to the power of minus 2. Now once I've got it in this form, it now becomes a lot easier for me to work out dy over dx. And remember, as mentioned before, to find the differentiation, I just lower the power by 1 and move the power to the front and lower the power by 1. So here I'm going to end up with 3. Move that minus 1 over to the front and I'm going to get positive 2. And I lower the power by 1, so that becomes minus 2. And then I move the minus 2, multiply that by the 3 over 4. So that's going to give me 6 over 4, which is minus 3 over 2 simplified. And I've got x to the power of minus 3. Now from this, I then want to substitute x equals 1. So when x equals minus 1, I end up type that all into my calculator. I get 3 plus 2 lots of minus 1 to the power of minus 2 plus, I'm going to write 1.5 because I'm just going to type this straight into my calculator, of minus 1 to the power of minus 3. Now be careful when you are typing all of this into your calculator, but if you do type it incorrectly, you should end up with a final answer of 6.5. Moving on to question 13, it says that A is at minus 2,5, B is at 413, are points on a circle. AB is the diameter. Work out the equation of the circle. Give your answer in the form of x minus a squared plus y minus b squared equals c, where a, b and c are integers. Well, for this, the first thing I need to do is find the midpoint. Because if I draw a little sketch, then this point here is A, this point here is B. That's the diameter of the circle, so the midpoint is going to be our center. So the midpoint, which I'm just going to call C, Now to find the midpoint between two coordinates, what I'm going to do is use this formula. So I've got x1 plus x2 divided by 2, and I've got y1 plus y2 divided by 2. So this is the formula I'm going to use, and this is my x1, y1, and this is my x2, y2. So substituting those numbers in, what do I get? Well, I'm going to get 4 plus minus 2 over 2, and I'm going to get 13 and minus 5 over 2, and that gives me a midpoint coordinate of 1, 9. Then from this, what I've then got is that looking at that, oh, that should be a plus rather. There we go. That makes more sense. I was wondering where that 9 had come from. And then from, as we've got the midpoint, we can then, so my center coordinate is at 1, 9. I then need to work out the distance of AB. So looking at the distance, I use this formula here. So the distance, let me just write down the formula here. Let's go for a different same color. So the distance is equal to the square root of x2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1 squared. So using this formula, substituting those coordinates in, I get the square root of the difference between the two x ordinates. That's 4 minus minus 2 squared plus y2, which is 13 minus 5 squared. If I simplify all of that, 4 minus minus 2 is 6. Square root of 6, square of 6 is 36. 13 minus 5 is 8. Squared is 64. And that's going to come up to square root of 100, which is 10. So the distance between those 2 points is 10. So this is the diameter, which means then that the radius is going to be 5. So if I've got the center and I've got the radius, all I've got to do now is substitute those two things there into this formula here, where C is equal to R. This is my A value and this is my B value. So if I just scroll down a little bit, the equation of the circle is going to be x minus 1 squared plus y minus 9 squared equals 5 squared. So you can either write your answer like this, or you can write it as x minus 1 squared plus y minus 9 squared equals 25. And there is my final answer. Moving on to question 14, let's zoom out so we can see the entirety of the question. It says that PQRS is a cyclic quadrilateral, and it says that angle PSR minus 4, oh, there we go. So angle PSR equals 4x plus 15 degrees, and angle PQR is 40 degrees smaller than angles PSR. Work out the value of x. So for this question, what we need to do is we know that opposite angles in a cyclic quadrilateral are equal to 180. Now, using this statement here, the angle PQRS, I don't know why I'm about to rule that line off, go for the highlighter, there we go, is 40 degrees smaller than PSR. So that means that this angle here is going to be 4x plus 15 minus 40. So then if I simplify all of that, what I end up with is that this angle here is going to be 4x plus 60 minus 40, which is 4x plus 20. And that is my angle for this. Now I know that that angle here plus this angle here is going to add up to 180, because opposite angles add up to, in a cyclic quadrilateral, add up to 180. So what I've got is I've got 4x plus 15 plus 4x plus 20 equals 180 degrees. Now if I expand this out, what I end up with is 4x plus 60 plus 4x plus 20 equals 180. Collect the like terms and simplify, we get 8x plus 80 equals 180. 8x equals 100. So x gives me an answer of 12.5. And there is my value of x. Moving on to question 15, it says simplify fully, and we've got our algebraic fractions with a square root chucked in there for fun. So we want to simplify this fully. So the first thing I would recommend that you do is try and simplify the two aspects. So if I take this first bit here, we want to get a common denominator. So a common denominator is going to be 10. So that's going to be 5x over 10 plus 6x over 10, giving me an answer of 11x over 10. And then I'm dividing that by, now square rooting anything is just raising it to the half, so that's going to be 6x to the power 6 divided by 4 to the power of a half. That is the same as, if I just write this down, 11x over 10. Simplify this, well, when we've got brackets we multiply the powers, so that's going to be 6 times a half, which is 3, so that's x cubed, over 4 to the power of a half. Well, anything to the power of a half means the square root of 4, which is 2, so I can write 2 there. Now remember the basic rules of dividing fractions. We flip the second fraction, turn it to a multiply, so I end up with 11x over 10, 2 over x cubed, and it turns to a times. 11x times 2 is 22x, and that's 10 times x cubed. Then simplifying this, well, we can divide both numbers by 2, so that gives me 5 and that gives me 11. We can cancel that x with that x, leaving me with that, and that leaves me with a grand simplified fraction of 11 over 5x squared. Now we can write it in a different way, so you could either write it like this, or you can write it using indices, which is 11 over 5x to the power of minus 2. So any of these two ways would be absolutely fine to write your final answer. Now moving on to question 16, it says here is an isosceles triangle. All the angles are acute. The area of the triangle is 120 square centimeters. Work out the size of angle y rather. So looking at this particular question, we know it's an isosceles triangle. So that means that this angle here is also going to be y. And then from this, we can then work out, then from this, using the area is equal to a half AB sine C. Now if I label this as angle C, then this means that that's going to be A and that's going to be B. And we know that the area of the triangle, as stated in the question, is 120. So A is equal to 16 and B is also equal to 16 and C is equal to Y. So substituting all of this information into this formula here, well, what do we end up with? Well, we're going to end up with 0.5 multiplied by 16 multiplied by 16 multiplied by sine y, and that comes up to a total of 120. Now if I simplify all of this, what I end up with is 16 times 16, which is 256, divided by 2 is 128, times sine y equals 120. So then sine y equals 120 over 128. Then to work out y, all I need to do is just do the inverse sine of 120 over 128. And if I type that into my calculator, I get a y value of 55.2 degrees, and that's to 1 decimal place. Now moving on to question 17, it says solve the simultaneous equations, and we've got 3 unknowns and 3 equations. It says do not use child improvement, you must show your working out for 5 marks. Now when approaching these 3 level of simultaneous equations, what you want to try and do, like with linear equations, is try and get one variable the same and the same quantity and the same sign preferably. Now you may choose to do b's the same or c's the same. I'm going to go making a's the same because I like to keep things nice and positive. And so, however, if you've done a different route, you should end up with the same answer as what I'm going to get. So as long as you're getting the correct a, b and c values and you showed some algebra to get there, you'd get 4 marks for it. So for this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply this equation by 4, and I'm going to multiply this equation by 2, so that we end up with positive 4a on both the equations. So if I multiply this first equation by 4, I end up with 4a plus 12b minus 8c, and that equals 16. The second equation I'm going to leave the same, so that's minus 3b plus 5c equals minus 5, and I end up with 4a plus 2b plus 6c, and that equals 18. Now I'm just going to label these as #1, #2, and #3. Now what you want to do is to get our two equations, solve this using more GCSE style of simultaneous equations, is I'm going to say using #1 and 2 that I get 4a plus 12b minus 8c equals 16, and I've got 4a minus 3b plus 5c equals minus 5. Now if I take away the two equations, the a's cancel out. 12 minus minus 3 is 15b, and minus 8 minus 5 is minus 13c, and 16 minus minus 5 is 21. So that there is one of my equations to use. Then using 2 and 3, I end up with, let's use a different colour, I've got 4a minus 3b plus 5c equals minus 5, and I've got 4a plus 2b plus 6c equals 18. Now if I take away the two equations again, I eliminate one of the letters, which is what I'm wanting. So minus 3 minus 2 is minus 5. 5 minus 6 is minus 1. And minus 5 minus 18 gives me minus 23. And there is my second equation. So from this, what I then want to do is use those two boxed equations. So if I combine this equation here and this equation here, so let's just call that #4 and #5. So using #4 and #5, I end up with 15b minus 13c equals 21, and minus 5b minus c equals minus 23. Now from this I can then solve this simultaneous equation, so I need to multiply this equation by 3, and doing so what I end up with, and let me just scroll over here so we've got a bit more space, I end up with 15b minus 13c equals 21, and I'm going to end up with minus 15b minus 3c equals minus, not 23 because I need to multiply that by 3, I end up with minus 69. Now from here, because my b's are the same quantity but I want to get rid of them, so here I'm going to add the two equations. The b's cancel out. Minus 13 plus minus 3 is minus 16c, and 21 plus minus 69 is, so let me just quickly check, minus 69 gives me an answer of minus 48. And that leaves me with a c value of 3. Then if I, using one of these equations, either this one here or this one here, I'm going to go for using 15b minus 13c equals 21. We know that c equals 3, so I've got 15b minus 13 lots of 3 equals 21. 15b minus 39 equals 21. So 15b is going to equal 60. So b equals 4. And then now that I've got my BC values, I can just work out what A is. So then using, if I pick one of the equations, I'll go for the top original equation. So using A plus 3B minus 2C equals 4. We've got A equals 3 lots of 4 minus 2 lots of 3 equals 4, in which we end up with A plus 12 minus 6 equals 4. A plus 6 equals 4, so A equals minus 2. And so my values of A, B and C are going to be minus 2, 4, and 3. Now moving on to question 18, it says A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H is a cuboid. AB is 40 centimeters, BC is 9 centimeters, CG is 20, P is a point on HG such that HP to PG is 3 to 7 and AP is 25. And the question is asking us to work out the size of angle APC. Now angle APC is the one that's marked, so let's just emphasize that, and this is what we need to do. Now in order to work out this triangle, the angle of APQ, I need to use what's most likely going to be the sine rule or the cosine rule. But what I need to do is I need to work out what the three edges of what I need to do is find AP, CP and AC. Now looking at the information that I've been given, I haven't been given any of that, so no, I haven't. AP, which is 25, so I can label this side as 25, but I don't know what the other two sides are. Now to find AC, which is this length here, then what I could do, if I take that triangle out, and this is the point A, it should be A not C, that's A, that's C, and that's B. Now, this is the side that I'm wanting to find. This side here is 9 and this side here is 40. So AC is going to squared equals 40 squared plus 9 squared. So AC is going to equal the square root of 40 squared plus 9 squared. So that's going to give me an answer of 40 squared is 1600 plus 81. So AC on the calculator gives me an answer of 41. So this length here is 41. Then what I can do is then find out what a CP is. Now in order to do that, what I need to do is I need to use this information here. Now using the ratio, what we know is that H to G is equal to, well, H to G is this length here. Let me use a different colour. So H to G is this length here, and that length there we do know because that is the same as AB. So AB equals HG, which is equal to 40 centimeters. Now using this ratio, what I've got is I've got 10 parts. So 40 centimeters divided by 10 equals 1 part equals 4 centimeters. So that means H to P, which is 3 parts, is going to equal 12 centimeters, and P to G is 7 parts, which is equal to 28 centimeters. Now from this, what I then need to do is I then need to work out what P to C is. Now P to C, using the Pythagoras again, so I've got PC squared equals, so using this triangle here, that P to G we've already worked out as being 28. So what I've got is this triangle here, that's 28, this is 20, so that's going to be, and this is PC, and that's G. So if I just call this Y, that we know that Y is going to equal squared equals 28 squared plus 20 squared. So Y is going to equal the square root of 28 squared plus 20 squared. And if I type that all into my calculator, I get an answer of 4 root 74. Now I'm going to use the exact values because really I should only be rounding up my final answer. Now if I take this triangle, now I've got a lot of work all over the place, so let me just draw this triangle out. This is the angle that we want. This is P, this is A, and this is C. And what I've now know is I know all 3 sides of that triangle. And this is 41. Now if I just scroll down, this is the triangle that I'm going to be using. So I'm going to be using the cosine rule, in which it's finding the angle. So cos A equals and it's going to be b squared plus c squared minus a squared over 2bc. Substituting the values in, I've got a equals, I'm just going to call this, I can't call it x, I've already used x, let's call it z. So cos z is equal to, and labeling the triangles is, if this is a, that's going to be little a, that's going to be b, and that's going to be c. So what I've got is I've got b squared, so that's 4 root 74 all squared, plus c, which is 25 squared, minus a, which is 41 squared, all divided by 2 times 25 times 4 root 74. Now if I type that all into my calculator, what I end up with is a cos z value of 0.074 blah blah blah, and then if I do the inverse cos of that, of 0.074 blah blah blah, I end up with a z value, and that z value is going to equal 85.7 degrees, and that's to 1 decimal place. Now moving on to question 19, it says expand and simplify fully 3x plus 4, 2x minus 3 and 5x minus 2. And this is for 3 marks. Now your method for this might be different to what I'm going to go through, so as long as your final answer is the same as mine, then you should be good for those 3 marks. Now when it comes to multiplying out 3 brackets, it's always important that you start with 2 brackets, and I always recommend, well, for my personal preference, I always go for the second 2 brackets. So if I multiply out the second 2 brackets, what I end up with is 3, I don't know why I've put a bracket there, so let me just get rid of that, and I've got 3x plus 4, and expanding the next 2 brackets, I get a total of 10x squared minus 19x plus 6. So now what I need to do is multiply out these brackets. So if I multiply 3x by everything in that second bracket, I get 30x squared, cubed rather, minus 57x squared plus 18x. And then I multiply 4 by everything in that second bracket, in which I'm going to end up with positive 40x squared minus 76x and plus 24. Now notice how I've organized my coefficients of x in nice equal columns, and the reason for that is so that it just makes it easier for when I'm now adding those expressions. So what your final answer should look like is it should look like 30x cubed minus 17x squared minus 58x plus 24. And there we go. Then moving on to question 20, it says f of x equals 2x cubed plus 11x squared plus 12x minus 9. And for 28 it says use the factor theorem to show that 2x minus 1 is a factor of f of x. Well, for this what we need to do is you need to use this factor to try and work out what number it is we need to substitute in. So with these, what you do is you make the expression equal to 0 and then solve it for x. We get 2x is equal to 1. So x equals a half. So that is the value we want to substitute in to this expression here. So here, working out what f of a half is, well, it's going to be 2 lots of a half cubed plus 11 lots of a half squared plus 12 lots of a half minus 9. And if I type that all into my calculator, I get an answer of 0. So therefore, 2x minus 1 is a factor. It then says for 20b, show that f of x equals 0 has exactly 2 solutions. So for this, what we need to do is we need to look at comparing the coefficients. So if I just write down the original f of x equation, which was 2x cubed plus 11x squared plus 12x minus 9, and that can be written now. We know that 2x minus 1 is a factor, and so therefore we need to multiply that by some quadratic. Now what we now need to do is if I expand all of this out, then what I end up with is I'm going to end up with 2ax cubed, and then it's going to be plus 2bx 2x squared minus ax squared plus 2cx minus bx minus c. And that equals 2x cubed plus 11x squared plus 12x minus 9. Now from this, what we now need to do is compare the coefficients. So for this, if I use my markers, so here we've got 2, and that's going to be equal to 2x. So everything with an x squared, so that's 11 on that side. I've got plus 2b minus a. Apologies if it's not come out great on the highlighter. Let's go for a different highlighter that we've not used. Let's go for pink. So here I've got plus 12, and I've got everything with an x is that and that. And then on the last one, let me just use a different highlighter. Let's go for grey. We've got minus 9 and we've got minus c. So from this straight away, if I look at the coefficients of x cubed, on the left hand side I've got 2, and on the right hand side I've got 2a. So that means that a equals 1. Then if I look at the coefficients of x squared, I've got 11 on the left hand side, and I've got 2b minus a on the right hand side. And now a equals 1, so I've got 11 equals 2b minus 1, so 12 equals 12b, so b equals 6. And then looking at the coefficient of the constant, I've got minus 9 on this side and minus c on the right hand side, so c equals 9. So what I've then got, if I substitute those values of a, b and c, let me just change this to a yellow. So if I substitute these values into this, then what I end up with is 2x minus 1 in one bracket. I end up with x squared plus 6x plus 9 in my second bracket. Now from this, I can then factorize this, in which I end up with 2x minus 1, and that's going to be x plus 3, x plus 3, in which then I can combine these two things here, leaving me with 2x minus 1 and x plus 3 squared. And as you can see, we've got two solutions. So the solutions of x, where this equals 0, is going to be minus a half or minus 3. And there we go. Actually, plus a half, I should say. And there we go. Moving on to question 21, it says work out the values of x between 0 and 360 for which 2 tan squared x equals 3. Give your answer to one decimal place. So for this, if I just write out the question, equals 3. What you want to do is you want to get tan x the subject. So here I've got tan, or x the subject. So tan x squared equals 3 over 2. So tan x equals the plus or minus of the square root of 3 over 2. So x equals plus minus inverse tan of root 3 over 2. Now, if I type that all into my calculator, I get x values of 50.8 and minus 50.8 degrees. Now, to find the other angles, if I just do my sketch of the tan graph, in which it looks something like this. Like so for 0 and 360. Now I've gone that little bit extra simply because I've got minus 50.8. So here is plus 50.8 and here is minus 50.8. So what I'm looking for here, actually no, that's wrong. That is positive square root of 3 over 2, and that is minus root 3 over 2. In which then what I'm trying to find is this value here. Let's use a different colour so we can see it. This value here, this value here. And I'm also looking for this value here, and I'm looking for this value here. Now I know that this number here is 50.8, and this number here is minus 50.8. So what I need to do is find those other angles. So from this point here, again, apologies for the use of colours. So this blue section here, see if this highlights it there. That distance there is 50.8 from when it's 0. So to work out this point here, which is at 180, so the next value is 180 plus 50.8, which gives me an answer of 230.8. So that's one of my values. And if this distance here is 50.8, then to work out what this distance here is, that's 360, it's going to be 360 minus 50.8, which gives me an answer of 309.8. So my 4 angles are these numbers here. So I need to write 50, actually not that one, it's this one here I need to work out, and that's 180 minus 50.8, which is gives me an answer of 129.2, and there is my third angle. So my angles are 50.8 to 1 decimal place, we've got 129.2 degrees, we've got 230.8 degrees, and we've got 309.8 degrees, and there are my angles for that one. Then finally, moving on to our last question, it says using powers of 2 or otherwise work out the non-zero value of x for which 16x to the power of x is equal to 1 over 2 to the power of 3x. So let's have a look at this. Well, looking at the left hand side, simplifying this, well, when we've got brackets we multiply the powers, so that's going to be 16 to the power of x squared, and that equals 1 over 2 to the power of 3x. Now what we want to do here is write 16, preferably not by crossing it out, we want to write 16 as a power of 2. So if I focus on this, I know that 16 is equal to 2 to the power of 4, so I can rewrite this as 2 to the power of 4 x squared, and looking at this right hand side, that using the rules of indices, I can write 1 over 2 to the power of 3x as 2 to the power of minus 3x, and what I then end up with is something that looks like this. Now from this, again, remember with brackets we multiply the brackets, that's 2 to the power of 4x squared equals 2 to the power of minus 3x, and then from this what I know is that these two powers, because the base numbers are the same, must be equal to each other. So 4x squared equals minus 3x. Now because we want the non-zero values, we can't simply take away x from both sides. So here what we need to do is take the 3x over to the other side so that it equals 0. Then from this we can then factorize, so we could take an x out. So I've got 4x plus 3 equals 0. So from this, what we've then got is 2 possible values of x, so either x equals 0 or 4x plus 3 equals 0, and solving this we get 4x equals minus 3, so x equals minus 3 over 4. It says in the question that x, we need to work out the non-zero value, so we don't want this value here, instead we want this value here, so x equals minus 3 over 4, and there we go. Now we'll include the grade boundaries of both this paper and the overall score, so feel free to check out the description for the grade boundaries. I'll also chuck in a question breakdown so you can see which topic refers to which question if there were any questions that you weren't sure about.